We'll go ahead and get started as other people start to join us as well. So I just want to go through a couple announcements real quick. So we have our social gatherings. We have one more for the summer in Eagle on the 23rd. And I believe there's still one that's going to be planned on June 30th here in Salt Lake City at the library in Sugar House. And that's planning to be about from 3 to 5. So look for details that will be coming out on that as well here soon. And we do have a new board, as we announced last month. These are the candidates that we've put up for the voting. If you haven't voted yet, we still need a few more votes in to get to meet our bylaws of what we call quorum. And so if you would look for your email, and if you haven't voted yet, just go ahead and do that. We'd much appreciate that. We're really excited about the new board that's coming in and starting. And so we just need your vote to finalize and get them up to speed on what's happening in our chapter as we go forward. Amber is with us today. She is our new president and will be taking over the realm as we head into the rest of the year and into next year. So just a couple of things about the earning the CCEUs for this session. There will be, of course, you're registered because you're here today. At the end, there will be a survey that Stacy will post in our chat, and you can take that survey, enter in your email, and then that way we know of who to email the CCEUs to. Guess it's $25 if you're not a member of our chapter. As well as also note that the slides that Cathy will be going over today, we will discuss that, or that will be sent out at the end of our session today as well. And so just be aware of that. And so the next part is, sorry, I've got my slides messed up here. Of course, at the end of the presentation today, we'll go into breakout rooms and just kind of talk about what we learned and what we gathered from today's learning and how to apply that forward, but also just to spend some time getting to know each other, ask each other questions. Doesn't even have to pertain to the session. It's just really to spend about the last 15 minutes basically of our program, just kind of talking with each other, and then we will sign off basically at 5 to the hour, 5 to 1 o'clock. So other than that, with that, we will, I'd like to introduce Cathy. She is our presenter today. We're really excited to have her with us. She is currently the co-leader on the ICF Ethics Community of Practice. And if you're not familiar with the Community of Practice, ICF Global, they have several different community of practices, and it's just where we as coaches can join. They have different sessions throughout the year on topics that are related to that community practice. So there's like a executive coaching community practice. There is a internal coaching community practice. There's lots more, and so definitely recommend you go to the ICF Global website, check those out, sign up for those, get involved with those community practices as well. So a little bit more about Cathy. She is the CEO and founder of the Center of Coaching Certification. And she's been doing that for several years, and where she coaches and trains other coaches. As a professional, she also mediates conflict. She facilitates internationally. She's a sought-out trainer and coach, drawing from her 30 years of experience of business ownership and management as well. Her personal mission statement is people, and she's known for her passion of sharing the insight, experience, positive attitude, and information that empower others to achieve the results that they desire. So with that, I'll turn that over to Cathy.
Thank you so very much. Excited about the conversation we're going to have. Very much want to invite all of you to, if you're in a place where you can, be great to have you on screen so that we can all see each other and make this a conversation. We are going to do breakout rooms at one point and have some discussions about case studies that will give you the objectives, what you are aiming to gain from this conversation. We'll talk about using coaching ethics to inform technology choices, discuss the case studies, and then of course, debrief the insights from those discussions. And we're going to talk about my very favorite point from the Code of Ethics, number 28, doing the right thing. We'll have some time at the end, of course, for questions and answers as well. So to get that started, the ICF Code of Ethics informing how we choose technology, there's a couple of points to me that stand out. Number 3 talks about maintaining the strictest level of confidentiality. 4 talks about the clear understanding of how information is exchanged. So when you have a sponsor and the client involved in the relationship, whoever the stakeholders are, knowing what that exchange of information is going to be before you start with the coaching relationship, and have information in your agreement around the conditions under which information is not kept confidential. So for example, a lot of us talk about if there's a threat of harm or an unreported crime, then information is no longer confidential, as an example for you. Number 7 in our code talks about maintaining, storing, and disposing of records in a way that promotes that confidentiality. I'm also going to say that ethics interpretive statements are incredibly valuable for understanding in more detail what some of this is talking about. Very specifically, confidentiality is a big piece. And that's the big question when you're choosing a technology. Which technology is going to best protect confidentiality? An interesting piece to that, we're going to talk about it in the case study, is how do you manage that when you have an internal coaching relationship? Or how do you manage it when you have a sponsor? The data protection, the information protection of our clients requires us to be vigilant. We have to pay attention. We have to take appropriate security precautions. Of course, what those are, I'm not sure sometimes. Hopefully we can gain some insight in our conversations here. The other thing that's huge, and it's interesting that we even have to say it, is we can't post identifying or confidential information. So sometimes coaches are promoting themselves in social media and they'll put a posting up that shares information about a client that makes that client identifiable. And they just violated confidentiality by putting something on social media in that way. I love this one. I fought for years to get this talked about in terms of our ethics. So very specifically, if a computer is owned by a company, if the platform you're using is owned by the company, if the email you're using is owned by the company, if the telephone are, especially when sometimes companies randomly record phone calls, you've got to be aware of that. I actually had a coach come to our coach training program, and they were coaching internally and they were taking notes on their company owned device. And yes, that does present an issue. The manager asked the coach, what's being talked about during that coaching engagement? And the coach said, well, I can't tell you, it's confidential. So the manager went to the IT department and said, get the notes off that person's computer. And the IT department did. Now, the manager was within their rights. They had the authority to get those notes. The IT department had the obligation to provide those to the manager when requested. And now the manager has the notes, the confidential information from those coaching sessions. I'm going to ask you to go into 2 different breakout rooms, and I'm going to give you a couple of questions to respond to. Smart idea to grab a screenshot of this, whatever else you can do. Your questions in your group. Where can notes be kept? When can client information be shared? And what information can be shared with who? I'm going to ask you in your breakout rooms to elect a spokesperson. We'll probably just do a couple of breakout rooms. Everybody participate in the discussion. And then when we bring the groups back together, we're going to ask you to share the takeaways. So the spokesperson will be in charge of heading up that effort. Is everybody good with what you're going to do in your breakout room? Okay, so I'm going to stop my share on the screen and I'm going to set up a couple of breakout rooms. We're going to let the Zoom genie go ahead and decide who's going where. And I'm including the host and the co-host on this. So the breakout rooms are being opened. It'll show on your screen that you can click to join. So if everybody it's popped up, go ahead and join your breakout.
And Cathy, it didn't put me in a breakout room. I don't know why. Oh, here we go. Hi, Desiree and Victor.
Looks like we have everybody back. So what we're going to do is go ahead and hear from each group. And I'm going to ask the spokesperson to take the lead on that. I've got a few questions to help you get started on what you want to share. Who wants to start?
I'm happy to start. So on the first question, where can notes be kept? We've approached that more from where are notes being kept at present? What are people doing? What are we in the group doing specifically? So everything came up from actually printing out or having hard copies, and storing those for a certain amount of time, to I don't take notes, to I take notes electronically, and very little, and then keep those for a certain amount of time and give them the client access to those. We talked about doing something encrypted on an encrypted drive, and locking in file cabinets, keep just security kind of things that will help potentially keep those notes safe. But yeah, there's kind of all over the board in terms of how even within our group, how it's done. So I guess were these 3 questions up on the screen, Cathy, for me now to share, or was it more?
Yeah, what did you learn as a group and insights you want to share?
Well, we did talk about, some of the freedom that we as coaches have or feel we have, and that could be changing, or maybe it's already changed and we're not keeping up to it in terms of the protocol and the things that ethically how we need to be keeping records and taking notes and who we should be sharing that with. And it really, I think it came back and to me personally to the agreement I think you mentioned that, Cathy, just to having a clear agreement and writing some of these things in the agreement. So for me personally, it just came back to taking another good look at my agreements and do I need to add things about note taking and how long those are made available to the client or stored or anything like that. If they're relevant stakeholders, who are they and what kind of access do they have? So those kinds of things. Questions. I think we have a lot of questions. So we're looking hopefully to get some more insights here as we go along, but a lot of questions because it's so varied. And I think a lot of us as coaches appreciate that freedom that we have. We kind of do it with our style and our approach, but we want to be ethical. So yeah.
Now the freedom comes with responsibility, huh?
Right.
Oh, nice. Thank you so much, Tim. I think, Todd, you were the spokesperson in the other group?
Yes. So as far as like where we keep notes, Google Drive, on a computer like Excel or Word doc, which is backed up to the cloud, physical notebook. One person brought up like they understand as far as, because they work for a university, that they cannot they cannot keep it electronically on their system because it can be requested. So if it's on a physical notebook, then it cannot be requested. As far as like information and sharing, like if they're doing something illegal or self-harm or danger to others, that would be like talking to the police. But also anybody or any information or anybody for that matter that the client has given permission. So if like the client, there was an example where the client had given permission to the coach to share information with the therapist, the client's therapist. And another one is where it's a minor, where the minor was aware of the information, which was very specific as far as like, did they do their homework and were they doing okay, I think, or something like that. So very, very clear of what would be shared with the parent. But the minor was very aware of that in the intake. So it goes back to that coaching agreement. And so, and yeah, there was a question that did come up, and Giovanni, I might, or sorry, as Porva that asked the question. So she might want to ask that question again of you and kind of see where that goes.
Porva, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, so we were discussing the last question. So, in what cases can information be shared? So my question was that, in case of like in case of any harm to self or someone else or threat, information can be shared probably with local authorities, and in case of minors with guardians and all. My question was that in case the information is shared, does the client has to be informed that their information has been shared with the authorities or someone, whoever is the stakeholder?
I love that question. So when I read the Code of Ethics, I don't see it say that. At the same time, I feel like, okay, a client tells me I'm going to hurt myself or something like that. I'm going to say, as you know, per our agreement, that is information I share. And I'd probably inform them, unless I think telling them that is going to add to the problem, if you will.
Yeah.
In which case it's an after the fact conversation. So
in that case, if there is it can add to problem or it can add a threat to yourself. In that case, you inform the authority and then inform the client. Is that correct? My understanding?
Yeah. If I tell you, for example, you're my client and you say, oh, I'm going to kill myself or something like that. And I tell you, okay, I'm going to report that. That might expedite you taking action because you're afraid my reporting it is going to prevent you. And
True.
So that could clearly add to the problem and add to the harm. So I wouldn't want to do that. if I'm in a conversation with you, there are things I can do to hopefully get you thinking differently and changing your mind. Unsure if you're all familiar, Michael Marks, who's a big part of our ethics community or practice, does a session, for example, on suicide prevention and what to do as a coach. And it's fabulous. He did it for our community, and we have the recording on our YouTube channel. It's great information. I think that's the big question is, what's the timing and what's the impact of the timing? Another thing I heard that I thought was interesting, Google Drive, really got to think about what the privacy is of that. Look at what permissions you give when you use different technologies, which is going to set up my next case study. So we're going to say the coach used an online platform for coaching sessions. The client had a firewall at work and they were unable to access it. So the coach offered to meet on Skype. And as a sidebar to that, they had their phone near them and Siri is on the phone. So the questions for you to discuss, what do you want to consider when choosing technologies that you're going to use? Which technologies do you think are secure? And which technologies do you think pose risks? We're going to do the same setup in terms of breakout rooms. I'm going to recreate 2 rooms so that we mix up who's in the different rooms. So we'll set that up, and I am going to go ahead, let's see, and open the rooms. So please click to join. So let's invite your new spokespeople in to share your key insights. Who are the spokespeople? All right, go ahead, Amber. I saw your hand.
Okay. Okay, so for our group, I think a couple of the key takeaways were that I was hearing is to really be sensitive to where our client is at in terms of their confidentiality needs, and that some people have been through fraud, been victims of that, that maybe are even more hypersensitive to these needs. And so that they really know that we're careful and that we're doing what we can with that, and to spend some good time going through things with them so that they feel it, to add to that safe sense of safety for them. I know Rita, she opened my eyes to a lot of things in terms of talking about just different levels of security and different levels of even where our clients are used to in terms of security and where they might be coming from with those types of experiences with fraud. And she mentioned even using a code word with some of her clients so that they know nobody else but her and you would know that word. So just depending on how extreme or how heavy that gets for people. And then I think another piece too, along with what we talked about last time with documenting and having things in the agreement, but also just being a little more tech savvy, getting some education around some of these things. Giovanni said some great things about being able to go into Alexa and delete anything that Alexa's recorded. I would have no idea to do that. So it's interesting to look into that. And even this idea of that having the phone bias, could be recording things or could be monitoring that. We kind of hear it. And I think I don't like to think about that big brother type of thing all the time, but that doesn't make it go away, right? So knowing how to deal with that and what are some of the truths around that and what are not. I think some of our big takeaways. Anything anybody wants to add to that?
Turn Alexa and Siri off. Not in my room. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one because it is a listening ear. So nice. All right. And the other group, thank you for that, Amber. Who was the other spokesperson?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So thanks, Amber. That was good insight. And from our group, what we came up was keeping transparency with the client, informing them that, here's what we are doing to protect your privacy, and informing that, what are the steps we are taking. So to keep the privacy for their privacy. So for example, not just making Siri, Alexa, etc. off on our own phones or in our own houses, but also the client's phone if they have. So informing them that, these are the things we are doing, so that they have a better trust and they have complete information that, what all is there and how much at risk or open they are.
Nice. Thank you, Purva. Awesome. Okay, so I've got another one to talk about, and this one's going to be fun. Of course, they're all fun, right? Here's the case study. A coach uses Zoom to meet with their clients. We were talking about that, right? They choose to keep the cameras on. The client noticed the coach's reaction to what they said, and they apologized to the coach for the statement. Interesting, right? So the questions for you to consider: what are the pros of using cameras when you coach? What are the cons of using cameras? And how will you decide whether or not to use cameras? Good conversation. So we will, let me check. Somebody's got something good summary. So let me set up your breakout rooms again. And those are ready to go. So I'm going to open your breakout rooms. And you can go ahead and click to join. And I think each group selected a new spokesperson. So spokespersons, what are the insights you want to share? Who's going to start?
I don't mind.
Okay.
Well, first of all, just from my own point of view, I was really interested in everybody else's take. We don't talk about this much, and I don't usually choose to coach with camera, but we talked about pros and cons, and then the client's preference. So the pros for not using camera, I'll start with my own point of view, is that you create more intimacy and presence if you're only listening. And I don't think you gain much, and I don't like the lag that you get with Zoom, even though sometimes it's imperceptible. But the pros also is that you get to see each other, which some people really like, because the clients might like it. The cons are, the flip side of that. You sometimes have inaccurate information, that the reactions are not sometimes matching up with the voice, and it can be a slight lag, which messes with your mind. I think I've read that. It's not an original observation, but I wish I could give you the real reason. But it's a delay that's a cognitive, a cognitive problem. So the thing that did arise, though, that we like to ask the client what they wanted, what's their preference. And then Stacy mentioned that if you have a weak bandwidth, then it's essential to shut down the video. She's got a client all the way across the world, and they do better with audio only. And then there's a idea of using a hybrid where you introduce yourself with video and return to it maybe every now and again to touch base, and then continue with the video turned off.
Awesome. Thanks for that sharing, Linda. And who's the spokesperson in the other group?
I am. So we talked about the pros as far as like really being able to see the client, see their language, their body language, their reaction. And then also I shared an experience, like I have a client, she has a very thick accent, and we had to turn the video off. And it was really hard for me to really understand, because seeing her speak, it's a lot easier for me to understand what she's saying. And so so those are, just getting to know and working with the individual on camera. Another person brought up, like, very similar to what Linda was saying, is like just that listening, where there are no cameras, and so you're able to really just get in tune to that listening piece of just working with a client just through audio only. And I'm trying to think of what else we talked about as far as a little bit also about, it can be distracting as well with a camera, with backgrounds that might be happening, people walking by, or if they're in an office, for example, stuff like that. So
Yeah, there's some fun stories around that one, right?
yeah. So what, if anybody has anything else in the group to add to that?
It was really interesting because one group started with the idea of being off camera was more intimate. And the other group started with the opposite idea, being on camera was more intimate. And there's definite pros and cons to both of them. It's a lot of things to be thinking about. Okay, so a couple of things with you in terms of doing the right thing. And my favorite number in the Code of Ethics is number 28, do good. So do good, discuss these things with your client, have the conversations, be very upfront and transparent with them. When you're using technologies, do your homework on them. And what is the protection on it? Granted, nothing's perfect. At the same time, we want to be aware because there are some that are very clearly state where the access is. And of course, review the Code of Ethics and the interpretive statements. You've got the documents, go back to them time and again. Very valuable each and every time. Pick up something new. I love the ethics interpretive statements. That's a dynamic document. Couple of resources for you. So ICF does have a Code of Ethics overview video series that you can access. And yes, you're going to get the handouts from the PowerPoint. So that means you'll have these links, the Code of Ethics and the ethics interpretive statements. Hopefully you know where those are at the same time they're available to you. Then they also have an ethics FAQ page, which is helpful to you. There is a complimentary CCE, continuing coach education course on ethics. You go online, you watch the videos, and you take the quiz that helps you meet your continuing ed requirement for ethics, which is an area where you have to have it. There's a hotline, both via email and telephone. If something comes up and gosh, I don't know what to do or how to handle this. There is an ethics review board as well. So if you become aware of an ethical violation, the Code of Ethics calls on us first to address it with a coach that is violating the ethics. And then if that doesn't take care of it, you can go to the review board and there's a process for investigating that. The ethics community of practice, and as Todd said, I think there's about 10 communities of practice. Personally, I join all of them because it doesn't cost anything and they all do quarterly webinars and I attend as many as I can. Can't attend them all. I do as many as I can. It's free continuing ed. It's a great opportunity. So take advantage of that. Of course, absolutely the best one is the ethics community of practice. And I have no bias whatsoever there. Is everybody picking up on my sarcasm? So that is one of them. Love to have you join us. In addition to the quarterly webinars that we do, we also have an online discussion going in Basecamp where people can go in and pose questions and get responses from a multitude of coaches. So it's fabulous discussions there. And then there is an ethics water cooler, which is a monthly conversation. It's usually just a small group of people and unrecorded. No set agenda. It's okay. What are we going to talk about today? And we have some great conversations. So all resources for you. I do want to say thank you to each and every one of you. It's been really fun having the conversation and discussing these things. I'm happy to be available for additional questions. And at the same time, I think we're at the time I was allotted. So I've got to turn it back over to all of you.
Well, thank you so much, Cathy. Really appreciate your time and input and thanks everybody for your discussion and being engaged in that. Really appreciate